Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and thanks for tuning in to SBAM's Small Business Briefing. I'm Sarah Miller, Vice President of Operations, and I am joined by my colleague, Jacob Manning. Jacob, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you everyone for tuning in. My name is Jacob Manning, and I am the Advocacy and Policy Manager with the Small Business Association of Michigan.
Real quick before we get into the agenda, we would like to say hello and welcome to one of our new members. They are Classic Roots Farm and owner Chase Pearson. Thanks for joining, and we encourage you, if you're watching and not yet a member, to become one today. All right, so a quick reminder to everybody who's tuned in that we have our fall SBAM member survey out in the field. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the link into the chat here on Zoom and on Facebook. And we would really appreciate your insights. It really covers a lot of just kind of understanding what small business owners are feeling right now. And your insights are all anonymous, but they do help us guide our work.
Yeah, and Sarah, I did thank you for saying that. I do just want to add that from an advocacy perspective, responses to these surveys are vital for the work that we do over at the Capitol. We talk to people every day who call into our phone lines and members who join us for any one of our great events that we hold across the state. But the responses that we get from these quarterly surveys are an actually statistically significant sample that we can use to better understand what's going on in the small business ecosystem. Through these survey responses, we could see that our members were feeling a softening labor market before the numbers even appeared in BLS statistics. And we can hear that small business owners are talking about the rise in insurance premiums before it even makes the news. So these are the sorts of on the ground, real time responses that help how we message when we go to the legislature. And it helps us decide what strategy we need to have when we go into advocacy. So thanks to anybody who's taken the time already to respond to the survey. And if you haven't yet, we'd really appreciate a few minutes of your time to tell us how you're feeling.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Jacob. All right, so Jacob, last week there was some newly introduced bills around economic development. And so, can you talk a little bit about this package and the implications for small businesses?
Yeah, so just to set the scene, the state is at a bit of a crossroads with economic development strategy. Programs that offer these big cash upfront payments to lure in out-of-state projects have really lost steam and lost popularity on both sides of the aisle. I know Speaker of the House Matt Hall has not necessarily been shy about his disapproval for the state's SOAR fund or the mega credits, which were deals that were put in place to ensure that the state's largest employers don't lay off too many of their staff during economic downtimes. But despite the disagreements in strategy between Speaker Hall and the governor, the two sides appear to have agreed during budget negotiations to hash out some sort of agreement on economic development before year end. So remember that funding for Michigan's SOAR fund was cut pretty significantly in budget negotiations. So I think there's an appetite to see that replaced with some sort of new tool. Um, the legislature is currently gone on hunting break this week, and next week is Thanksgiving. So the December session schedule is really it. But of course, there are holidays in December as well. So it's going to be sparse, but it appears that the House is committed to working hard on economic development in the few session days that they have remaining for the year when they do return back from break. And as Sarah mentioned, there was a package of bills that was introduced last week, including House Bills 5292 and 5293, which were introduced by Representatives Tisdale and Hoadley. And these bills would be really a reimagining of the Good Jobs for Michigan program. It's also been called in the past, it's been called Hire Michigan. Under these bills, any company that creates a new full-time job, and the job has to make 150% of the median wage for the designated region where the business is, but the business would be allowed to capture 50% of those new employees' state income tax that would usually be withheld. And they're allowed to do that during a 10-year period. So really, businesses aren't given cash up front, but they're still incentivized to create high wage jobs. So this particular proposal comes with a $50 million price tag and it'd be broken into three tiers of businesses that qualify. They've allotted 25 million for companies with more than 1,000 employees, allotted 15 million for businesses between 100 and 999, and most relevant for our people, they've allotted 10 million for businesses with fewer than 100. So we came out, our president and CEO, Brian Kelly, gave a statement in support of this. We're on board with this proposal. So, what do we like about this proposal compared to the sort of economic development proposals that we've heard in the past? Well, for starters, there's actually funds that are available for small businesses. The previous iterations of this proposal included a 25 or even a 50 job minimum to qualify for any funds at all, which means no funds are even possible unless you add 25 new employees at a time at this high wage mark. We asked actually in our last member survey, or maybe two member surveys ago, we asked members if a credit like this existed, where there's a 25 employee floor, if they would be able to utilize it with their business. And through that survey, we heard that about 4% of respondents said that they could utilize this new program if it were passed into law, which is quite low. Small businesses account for over half of the non-public employment in Michigan. So to include only the biggest of the bigs in your economic development strategy doesn't really seem to us like a very comprehensive vision for economic development. So we appreciate that this bill package opens it up to businesses that are just adding one employee. We also appreciate that this proposal doesn't pick winners and losers. Uh, we think that if a lawmaker wants to actually adopt an economic development approach that incorporates small businesses, that the best way to do that is to create a credit that is automatically available to anybody who meets the requirement and doesn't require any sort of compliance or grant application process to qualify for it. So that same survey that I referenced earlier, we also found that 26% of the respondents, only 26, only a quarter, said that they have the internal capacity within their team and their staff to comply with a grant application process and the rigorous compliance requirements that come from applying for a grant through one of these programs. So if you limit credits in these ways, it really acts as a subsidy for the most established, the big businesses that have these compliance arms of their business, and it just leaves a lot of opportunities for great investment on the table. So this credit is available directly through Treasury, and it's not really a grant process, but seems to be more accessible, not picking winners and losers in certain industries, and is an approach that we generally support. But as always with these stories, we will keep you up to date with this story as it develops.
All right, well, thank you for breaking that down for everybody. Last week, SBAM was in the news because we joined a coalition, a new coalition, the Alliance for Legal Reform. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so the Alliance for Legal Reform is a group that we've been working with for a couple weeks and months now, but just had its first initial announcement and launch last week. Essentially, this group is a collection of employer, insurance, business advocates from across the state, and the goal is to push policy proposals that bring Michigan back to a healthy legal climate. So what we have seen here at SBAM and just generally in the business ecosystem in Michigan is that we've had a string of pretty harmful Supreme Court decisions which have expanded liability and have put a lot of businesses at risk. I think that nationally, we've become a bit of an outlier and have started to garner a bit of a reputation. I know one publication has us listed as a judicial hellhole, which seems excessive, but is just indicative of how we're beginning to be viewed because of these rulings that expand our liability and put businesses at risk. And it really makes it harder for businesses to afford insurance. It makes it harder for insurance companies to properly figure out how to assess risk. And it makes it hard for businesses to assess risk too if they are going to expand, but they have to sink more resources into compliance that might not necessarily be required, but because the standards are higher, they are required. It just takes away from growth in all sorts of ways. And it's not the sort of flashy. It's not a bill that passed. It's not a sort of an initiative from the governor, but it's just something that is slowly chipped away at over time through judicial decisions. It's not something that is always out in front for people, but will start to chip away at businesses, particularly through those increased insurance premiums. So this group is really trying to get that in check. And the two issues that they've come out and said that this is where the legislature needs to start. The first one is third-party litigation funding. This is a mechanism where an outside investor can finance another person's lawsuit in exchange for some chunk of the award or settlement that comes from the case. Um, The Alliance would like to see some sort of transparency in that process, some sort of registration. We've seen a lot of, I don't know, there's situations where like a shady outside group could come and finance a lawsuit and prop up a lawsuit against a business where it might not be warranted and then reap some of the rewards on the back end. And the other piece of legislation that we're hoping to get some sort of solution to is the open and obvious one. And that is uh, it's actually something that I spoke about the last time I was able to join this program, but it would essentially bring Michigan back to the standard that had been Michigan law and currently is law in 41 other states, that if a hazard is both open and obvious to a reasonable person, that a business owner isn't liable to protect against it. So, stripping out this proposal would mean that frivolous cases um, cannot be brought to full trial, and right now they are being brought to full trial, meaning more cases have to settle, more cases go to a full jury, more expenses for businesses and the insurance companies as well. So again, something that we can keep you up to date on, but something that we thought would be worthwhile to bring to your attention as it isn't always the flashiest issue, tort reform, but is nonetheless very important to businesses.
All right, thanks, Jacob. Let's talk about unemployment insurance and the Unemployment Insurance Agency. We've actually been hearing that people are receiving notices of overpayment from UIA. So, what's going on?
Yeah, so there has definitely been a huge uptick in overpayment notices that have been sent out by the Unemployment Insurance Agency. And now, overpayment notices aren't abnormal. The UIA is bound by federal and state laws, which basically requires them to recoup overpayments. Overpayments are made by some sort of error in the department. There is a standard in the department where they uh, must issue payments in some sort of timely measure, and that results in overpayments that have to then be taken back. But there was a lawsuit that's been going on since 2022. And as a result of that lawsuit, the UIA was forced to freeze overpayment collection. Now, this lawsuit settled 2 months ago now in September, and the UIA is bound again by these same state and federal laws to continue seeking funds from the claimants who were overpaid back 3 years ago. This has caused a tremendous amount of heartburn for many people across the state who are now being asked to cut checks, sometimes as large as $20,000 for an unemployment insurance claim that happened way back in the pandemic. They might have forgotten about it at this point. Now, the UIA director, Jason Palmer, has been asked to present in both House and Senate committees about this uptick in overpayment notices. He's been asked by the legislature to answer why they have to do this. As a former legislative staffer, I can attest that a big chunk of the work that these legislative offices do is assisting constituents with unemployment insurance cases. So I would imagine that each of these legislators has heard a pretty good deal about these overpayment notices and are hoping to resolve the issue now. That being said, there was a bill that was introduced and that passed out of the Senate Labor Committee last week that we think really misses the mark on what a reasonable solution is. It's Senate Bill 700. And again, it passed out of the Senate Labor Committee. And the language of the bill would strictly prevent the UIA from collecting overpayments from claims that are 3 years old. And this is essentially a direct response to this circumstance. So it's not really clear to us whether this bill would put the UIA out of alignment with federal standards that they also have to answer to, as well as the state law. But what is clear is that simply wiping out the obligations is not really an appropriate response without an appropriation that comes from the legislature, because the UIA Trust Fund is 100% funded through employer assessments, and overpayments are a given in the unemployment system. As I mentioned, every unemployment system from across the country has like a target number where they want to be. Oh, overpayments are caused by error. It's one of their measurables that they try to reduce the amount of overpayments that they make, but they simply happen. And by just wiping out a portion of the overpayments that are owed back to the agency, it puts a big strain on the trust fund that will necessitate higher assessments, which will come from employers. So we think, and we've taken the stance, and we've issued a statement to the Senate Labor Committee when they took this bill up. We said if the legislature wants to wipe out these payments, it should come with an appropriation from the legislature, because the way it's written now, this bill would pretty much just leave businesses footing the entire bill. So again, a situation that we'll keep you apprised on.
All right, and Jacob, I know you spent some time last week learning a little bit about the a new system that the unemployment insurance agency is moving to. So, what can you tell us about that new system?
Yeah, so we've been trying to spread the word, and I know the unemployment insurance agencies tried to spread the word about their new system change. They currently use a system called MyWham, and MyWham's days are limited. They are switching over to a new system called MyUI, and they've been in this modernization process for a couple of years now, and they've been really great about being engaged with people on both the claim side and also the tax side, which is the employer side, and trying to ensure that they can do the best that they can to help everybody know that there is this new system coming. So Sarah just dropped a link in the chat for a website that they've kind of called the MyUI University, which is really their resource hub for all things MyUI. They are making this transition on December 15th, so about a month away, a little less than a month away. They seem to be on good track. We've seen the system, we've seen a demo, and everything appears to be in good shape. But our primary concern is making sure that business owners know that when they have to do these quarterly wage reports, I believe it's about halfway through January, that they are up to date and they're fully set up in their new MyUI accounts so that they're not scrambling last minute to upload their wage information and could potentially be out of compliance because they're not ready. So I know my UI or UIA has given us a list of 5 things that they want employers to do before this December 15th launch. These are all things that can be done before the system even goes live. And again, those obligations aren't required until January, but it is good to be in the system as soon as possible. The first thing they want everyone to do is to create a My Login for Business account. You can go to mylogin.org or go to My Login for Business. Just Google it. If you don't already have a My Login for Business, this is the portal that the state uses for a lot of their applications and is going to be using for My UI in that system. And you will need an account through My Login Business enabled in order to access your My UI account. They also want people to check their MyWham account. They want to check the access and review the information that's in there. There's going to be a port from all the data that's in MyWham will be transitioning over to MyUI in the next couple of weeks. And so they want to make sure that if your information is in MyWham, that it is accurate to what is the current state of your business. There's also an activation code that will be on your MyWham account. It's in a new box that isn't normal to what's currently there, but that activation code will be needed to log into your MyUI account. And they also advise that you review the current third-party administrator and employment associations that exist in MyWham, because again, there's going to be a transition. They try to get all the data from one site to the other, but there might be some things that you need to recheck once you're in the new system on December 15th. So we will, we want to offer a lot of opportunities for to make sure that people understand what's going on with this new system transfer. Anytime there's a system transfer, there's opportunities for confusion and there could be bugs along the way. But if there's anything that we learned, we are going to share that with you and make sure that you are as prepared as you can be for this system transfer.
Thanks, Jacob. Appreciate you taking the time to kind of learn about this on behalf of our members. And December 15th is not that far away, so everybody get prepared. All right, so we've talked previously about efforts to cut regulatory red tape for small businesses. Any updates since the last discussion?
Yeah, so a bit of background. If you remember back during I guess it was February or March during the governor's State of the State address. She had said that she wants to really address the overregulation, the needless red tape that exists throughout state government. And this was really taken up as a crusade by the chair of the House Rules Committee, Representative Bill G. Schuette. He embarked on this mission to cut red tape. He released this report called the Red Tape Report. And really, his team got to work analyzing a bunch of different industries across the state and finding where there are maybe some overlapping, outdated, redundant regulations that exist within statute, within the legislature's authority, where they can repeal those and make it easier for businesses in whatever sector. Now, we were asked to come testify on this back when this process initially began. And our thought on this is that if we want to highlight any area where overregulation is the most severe, we thought that there was no better place to start than childcare, because not only is childcare a leading workforce shortage issue, we hear from all sorts of people that that lack of affordable childcare is one of the leading things keeping people out of the workforce entirely and is affecting employees. But we also know that most providers are small businesses themselves. I think the Department of Labor says 95% of providers are small businesses themselves, whether that be family providers or small centers, which is really quite intense. We also know that because childcare centers have this important job of keeping kids safe, that they have to respond to a lot of different agencies and departments. I know in our testimony, I think it was said that each childcare provider has to respond to six different regulating agencies. That creates a lot of opportunities for overlap and a lot of uh, boxes that need to be checked have to be checked in one spot and then have to be checked in another spot. And maybe the requirements are just a little bit different, but they still both need to be checked in order to gain the clearance. So, um, that was one of the issues that we brought to the representative's attention and is one that he seems to have addressed or is hoping to address with this new bill that he introduced. House Bill 5127 was a bill that we actually went and testified alongside Representative Bill G. Schuette on, which would essentially it would require MyLeap to only regulate parts of a child care center that are being used for child care purposes. So this would mean that MyLeap cannot regulate parts of a multi-use building if there's like a building where one of the occupants is something in a completely unrelated field, but as long as children aren't there, don't see why it necessarily matters, and it just helps focus, helps ensure that the main thing is the main thing, increases expansion opportunities for providers, and just seems like generally a good thing across the board to do to cut red tape and decrease the amount of things that providers have to worry about. So, as I mentioned, we testified alongside Chair Schuette, said that it takes steps in the right direction towards clarifying Michigan's regulatory framework in the childcare space and ensures that the main thing stays the main thing. So you can read more about this bill or even listen to the testimony. We have it listed on our website.
All right, thanks, Jacob. You know, one of the nice things about the briefing is it gives us a chance to just kind of talk directly to you all, the members, and we get to introduce you to different members of the SBAM team. And so today, Jacob, I know you're going to have our one of our newer colleagues, Francesca, join us for a little conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And a little over 3 months ago, SPAM added our newest superstar to our roster. We added Francesca Rocco Ellis to our advocacy team, as she is our new grassroots coordinator and policy advisor. She's really hit the ground running and is doing fantastic work already just in her short time here. And we wanted to invite her to the program today to introduce herself and to give an update on what she's helped, how she's helped update the Lansing Watchdog newsletter. Francesca?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I feel like superstar is quite the overstatement and sets the bar really high for what I need to live up to, but I digress. Anyways, like Jacob said, I'm Francesca Rocco Ellis, and I had the honor of joining the SBAM advocacy team 3 months ago, actually tomorrow. So a little bit of background about me. I got my start in the political world back in 2019, working in Detroit for the Wayne County Commission. And while I was working at the county, I really learned a lot about how local legislative branches work, in partnership with their state and federal representation, and really what it truly means to serve one's community. From there, I went on to do some work in business and education policy, having my hand in 9 different state legislatures and seeing how their policy and what their policy work looked like across the country and how similar and very, very different they can be from each other. And then after a few years of doing that, I now find myself here at SBAM, and I really couldn't be more grateful for the opportunity. And like Jacob mentioned, he and I have been working on making some updates to SBAM's Lansing Watchdog newsletter. And what the Lansing Watchdog is, In partnership with MERS News, the Watchdog is a weekly update of what's been happening at the state capitol, usually with an emphasis on things that are happening legislatively that are significant to small business owners. And previously, the Lansing Watchdog was 5 different news articles that we would curate from a week's worth of MERS reporting, which we would then send out to our subscribers. When I came aboard, the advocacy team really had a goal of revamping the Watchdog to make it more digestible to subscribers. And with this, Jacob and I have introduced the new audio component of the Watchdog. This way, subscribers can listen into an audio rundown or a quick podcast, per se, of what happened the past week in Lansing. And that can be anything from legislative action to upcoming SBAM events and to Jacob's favorite, election tracking when all of that starts to pick up too. Essentially, our goal for the Lansing Watchdog is to be our members' trusted source for small business news. And if you'd like the opportunity to listen to Jacob's and my lovely voices each week while also staying informed on what's happening in the Michigan legislature, then you can subscribe to the Watchdog through your member portal or reach out to us at sbam@sbam.org if you need assistance.
Well, thank you, Francesca. That was great. And Superstar, I was just saying what I thought. Here we go. So before we close, we did want to remind our viewers that we have some exciting events coming up. In December, we have 2 fundraiser events for the Small Biz PAC. The PAC is how SBAM supports pro-small business candidates across the state in the political process. And our candidates have actually had great success over the last few election cycles. We will be in Grand Rapids on December 3rd and in Royal Oak on December 4th. And you can find more information at sbam.org/PAC. And of course, speaking about elections, there is one right around the corner, about a year away, and it's a big one. Michigan will elect its 50th governor next fall, and you have the chance to meet face to face with each of the candidates vying for the state's top job. So SBAM has joined forces with the Michigan Black Business Alliance to host a series of events where we sit down with each of the candidates, Democrat, Republican, and Independent. And our next event is December 15th in Northville, where we will be sitting down with former Speaker of the House and current candidate running to be the Republican nominee for governor, Tom Leonard. It's available for free for SBAM VIP and elite members. And for more information on that, please visit sbam.org/candidate series. Now, Sarah, I think with that, that is all I have today.
That was it. That was it, Jacob. And you are also a superstar. I know that our members are really happy to have you, Francesca, Kelly, of course, as our advocacy team here at SBAM. So thanks for everything you do. And Jacob, thanks for joining me today as my co-host. I hope everybody has a wonderful week, and we will be back here next Monday at 3 o'clock.
Thanks for having me. Have a great week, everyone.